So it's time to build a bed. So the first thing I did was have a look online and find the mattress that we want. With this design, we're actually going to be cutting the bottom third of the mattress off, so buying just a standard mattress with springs and all the rest inside is no use whatsoever. Managed to find a company that sells custom sized foam, and you can choose the density and even put a memory foam topper on it. So I took all the dimensions of that and then plotted it onto a very rough drawing of the inside of the van. Last night I hunted out all of our big beams of wood, 38mm by 63mm, nice big sturdy bits. This is what I'm going to be building all of the bed framework out of. Got a ton of it actually. Bought a load in preparation for building the van, and then we've been donated some by our lovely friends Metal Mum and Dad, which is going to help a lot, so thanks to that, guys. So yeah, the key with this is picking the piece of wood that's closest to the size, because you don't want to cut down a really long bit and then later on find that that's then too short to be used anywhere else. Luckily I've already got a load of different lengths, so it means that I should be able to find one that's pretty close to what I need and then just trim it down a little bit, and then we're reducing the amount of wastage that's created there. So I've got these 5 bits and they are all longer than 198 centimeters, including that one, which means longer than the bed. So those 5, might not need all 5, but those 5 are going to be the ones going this direction. Then I've got a handful of those that are going to be the beams that go across the way as well. Before I get started, I'm going to cover all of the electric stuff with some of this plastic sheeting. It came with the solar panels to protect them, so I'm just going to take a square of that and probably just tape it along some of the edges and just tuck it behind. Make sure it's all covered so it's not going to get dust on it. Well, it's far from beautiful, but it's going to protect it. That's all that really matters. And obviously I trimmed up all this bit because when I'm getting in and out, if I just kick it and trip over it. So, ready to go now. Each of these is long enough to be a cross member. One of them is close, slightly short, but it could be the one that goes at the very back because these bits jut out a bit. And obviously there's going to have to be one right at the back door because the mattress literally comes to the door. So when I was measuring it, the 198, which is the length of the mattress, is literally from here to the front edge of the bench there. So yeah, there's going to have to be a beam right at the back. So I've chucked some wood on the floor to try and figure out how this bed's going to work. This is somewhat what it's going to be like. These end bits won't exist. Also, kind of ignore this section for now because it gets a bit more confusing because of the pull-out bit. But this part is going to be the fixed section. So that's along the back of the van. Then you've got that channel down the side, so the mattress will come from the edge of this across to there. So that distance is 152, which is the width for the mattress. Then it's 170 to the outside of that one. And then this dimension here needs to be 137 because it's 198, which is the mattress length, minus 61, which is the bench. So 137 by 152, but technically 170 because of the width of the van. These are the slats that I'm going to use. There's 5 of them, but one's cut in half. I'll have 10. So basically you'll have a panel that pushes into another panel. So yeah, this lower 61 centimeter part that goes above the bench is going to push into this 61 centimeter part. It might be worth noting that I should probably make sure that's not in the middle, that it's slightly back, because I'm going to have to be able to push the full 61 centimeters into there, plus probably another beam across that way as like a stopper for this. So as you can tell, it's still very much in the drawing board stage, but it's given me an idea. I can probably start cutting some bits of the wood down. So I think the first 2 bits to do are actually the wall sections, because these outer pieces can be mounted on the wall and cut to the 137, which again is the 198 minus the bench, because you don't want a piece of wood going along the wall and then coming out alongside the bench, because it'll look crap and it won't be comfy because you won't be able to sit on the bench that direction. In the small van, the height from the ceiling to the wood that is underneath the mattress, so this doesn't include the mattress, is 91 centimeters, and I think realistically I need another 10 centimeters above my head to be able to sit comfortably on the bed, rather than being kind of hunched like that. Obviously need to factor in the thickness of the mattress too, so we'll just do a quick bit of paper math. This is the old van, 91 centimeters from the ceiling to the top of the wood that made up the bed. The mattress for that van is 10 centimeters thick, so really the gap here was 81 centimeters, and I'm saying that I need an extra 10 centimeters, but this new mattress is 15.3 centimeters, So the difference between the two mattresses is 5.3 centimeters. We need an extra 10 centimeters from a height. So this 91 becomes 106.3. I reckon we need that height to be 108 centimeters, and that's to the top of the wood. So the wood will be like that, and then we'll have the mattress, which is 15.3. So what's that, like 92.7? So before I had 81 centimeters, now I'll have 92.7. Hopefully that's enough that I can sit upright more. But it won't be as much of a problem in this van because there's a bench to sit on as well. So it's not just that I'm on the bed, whereas in the old van, like, the bed makes up the entire floor when it's down. So right, so I'm going to measure down 108 centimeters on the wall and see where it lands us. I'll measure from the roof down, and I'll measure from the floor up, because I can't guarantee that the roof is perfectly flat. Yeah, the floor is more trustworthy for a measurement. So I'm going to retake those measurements, draw the same line on the other side. So I'll need to find where the beams are. There's one there, I know that much. Definitely going to have nice strong support there. If I struggle to find another beam, I can also put some vertical supports in places. I just want to get that on to see what the height is going to be, and then I can sort of work from that. So I've just had the realization that once I put a bit of wood across the wall, it's not particularly easy to attach to that wood. So I think what I actually need to do is this very back box, you know, the very outline of this, that square, I think I need to build that out here and then attach it inside the van, because it's going to be a lot easier to screw that bit of wood together like that than it is to put some sort of L bracket or attachment or something once this is already on the wall. So I realised I wanted the wood to go from just before the metal to the end of the bench, but of course that bit's all curved, isn't it? So I've cut it, so instead it's going to sit like that, and then like at the end I'm going to have to kind of build a box bit that comes out like this, but that's fine. I want to just get this main structure in first. It's on a bit of a wonk at the moment. It's just kind of wedged in. Annoyingly, because of the shape of all this, I'm going to have, well, it won't be too hard. I'll probably just have a piece of wood that comes from here to there, and then a bit across, and then just kind of fill that space in with a bit of plywood or something so that you can't drop it in down there or anything like that. But it's a good start. A little bit out of breath. I had to wrestle with it a wee bit. So basically what I need to do now is measure up from the bench to there and make sure that those two measurements are exactly the same, and then I can attach that to the wall. Then here, luckily, this beam runs right down here. So I'll do the L bracket in this corner. I'll just shimmy it in about 1 inch so that all the screws are going to hit that beam. And for this, I won't be measuring from these wheel arch boxes because I didn't make them, so I don't know if they're the same size. So I'll probably just measure it from that structural thing, or the floor is probably the better bet, just to make sure that that height is exactly the same as that height. If you were lucky and you were parked up in a beautifully flat spot, drop your level on it, adjust it, job done. But this van is like that. So that's not going to work. Trying to get stuff level is a nightmare. So yeah, I'm going to get 4 brackets in on that. Just like the solar panels, I went to install it and realised I hadn't put the brackets on. It's a lot easier to do it when it's not already in place. So I'm going to put the brackets on these corners, put it back in, and then I'll be able to screw into position. Right, that's 4 brackets on, so let's try and get this in again. So I've added a few extra bits. This beam here, if you measure from that wall to the inside of this beam, it's 152, which is the width of the mattress. So that is there to kind of mark the end of the bed and the start of the counter that's going to go next to the bed. We're going to have the control panel and stuff, and maybe like underwear storage or something. There's quite a lot of room down there. The other thing I added, because of course this couldn't come past the metalwork here, so I've built out and across, and I've done that on both sides. At the moment I haven't actually mounted it
Because this is at an angle, it sits on it. But I'm now going to use the last two of these to attach that. It's a bit of an angle, so it's not going to be ideal, but it looks like the bottom 4 holes meet the metal. So I'm going to use self-tapping screws to put those 2 last L brackets under here, because it's really important that this back edge is extremely strong so that I can climb in and I can climb out. This leg is just a loose piece of wood there at the moment. It's taking shape now. It looks far more like a camper van, especially when you look in this way. Now I've got the bench and the bed space. I suppose I could have cut this piece of wood so it followed that perfectly, but it's a whole load of faff for not much reason really, when we could probably just cover this with a bit of carpet or fabric or have a curtain. A much easier fix. But yeah, you'll see still a bit of gap in there, but that's still creating such a tight bond with the wall. I'll demonstrate. I'll sit on that piece of wood and show you that it's perfectly strong. Well, it didn't budge a bit. Van was bouncing up and down, so those brackets are clearly strong enough. So just rinse and repeat. Gonna do the same on the other side. So I cut a little square out of the foam mat there, and I've put a leg in for that bit there, which means you'll be able to sit on the edge of the bed when it's in bench mode, and it's really strong. I've jumped around on every single corner and nothing moves. So the next step is I've got these bed slats, and so basically with this bed, this bottom third is going to pull out. So I'm going to make that out of this. So the way it's going to work is that these need to end flush with the end of the bench here. There's going to be a bit of wood that goes underneath that's going to strap them all together, and then there's also going to be a bit of wood that goes under here, which is going to count as a stopper, so that when you're pulling this part of the bed out, it's going to stop, and that bit of wood is going to catch under here when you're at the right place, so you can't just pull it all the way off. I've taken the measurement, it was 60 odd, and then I added 5 centimeters so that I can add a stopper on the end, so that works out at 70 centimeters. So I need to cut these down into 70 centimeters. I can get 2.5 out of each of these, and that'll be fine. Then I need to cut a piece of wood just like that one that goes along the edge and attaches them all together. Right, so you're going to need some imagination for this. This piece of wood here is going to be part of the front that pulls across. So all of these slats are going to be screwed into this, and then there's going to be a plywood front that comes down to here, and that's the backrest. So they all need to be spaced and then all screwed on. So it'll be one piece of wood with all the slats on it. But if you remember me saying, when you pull this out, you need something that's going to hit this to stop it once it's in place. So that's what this piece of wood is. So obviously on the underside of these slats, they're going to screw into that bit of wood, and as that pulls forward, it'll catch under there and stop it going any further. There's not actually going to be any weight on the slats when you sat on the bed, because we're going to router out the gaps so that it drops down, and then there's going to be plywood over the rest of the bed. Right, that's them all screwed onto that, so you can sort of see how this is going to work. So the next step is getting the stopper, which goes underneath. So I need to screw all these into the stopper, making sure that these are all straight. Then once that's screwed in place, then we have to put the rails along so that I can take this out. The way this is set up, this obviously falls through. Like I said, I'm going to have rails on these two bits that'll slide across, but I can't fit the rails yet because I'm going to be routering out into this wood so that the slats are sunken into this piece of wood. So if I were to put the rail on now, it would be the wrong height. But a wee demonstration, it will slide like this, and then that bit of wood right at the last second stops it. So now all I need to do is mark out where each of these slats lands on this piece of wood, get the router out, cut out some grooves so that these are flush with this piece of wood here, and then get the rails on. Ever so slight change of plan. Well, same plan, just different tool. We're not going to router this out completely. It's too much material to lift, having to take all these sections out. So instead, going to use a tenon saw and just cut that into like 4 pieces, and then just use the chisel just to knock it out. As you can see, you can really quickly just lift a load of material using the saw and a chisel, and then that's just going to lay it up nicely to just quickly go over it with the router, and that will take it to a perfectly smooth flat surface, because I still need to come down to this line here. So I'm just going to go ahead and do the other 9 of them. Good morning, guys. It's a beautiful morning here today. Looks like we've got an entire week of sunshine, so that's going to mean lots of van work and we should make some really good headway. So last night I got the runners in position for the sliding part of the bed, and I have realised that it's not quite going to work. I need to readjust it a little bit in order to put supports in for the plywood that's going to sit above it. I'll explain all that in a second. What I have done this morning is sand down the little gaps in the wood that the slats slide through, and now I'm just going to apply a load of beeswax to that, because that'll help the slats glide nicely over the top with less friction. Luckily it's a warm day, so it's quite soft. So I found these massive long bits of wood, and they managed to fit perfectly in between the slats with room to breathe if I do them that way up, which is obviously the stronger way. So these are going to be the bits in between the slats, which are going to connect to these little blocks. I don't know if I'm going to do all of them. It might not be needed. Depends how thick a ply we use, really. But for now, I'm probably going to do every second one, and then that's what the plywood's going to sit on. Because the slats are recessed, and then I've got the beams at that height coming across to here, which is the same height as the top of those blocks. That means that the plywood should sit above the slats, and the slats will just pull out from underneath. And then with legs on each end and in the middle of that bar, those legs will sit on the bench as it pulls out. There we go, there's one. It's going to sit like that and screw into that bit of wood at the end, and it's all going to pull it back together. So out of that wood I'm going to get 6. There's not really one needed there because it's so close to the wall support, so I'll start there. That gap seems fine for the plywood to hold, and then I'll do every second one. The pull-out bit comes to here, so I could actually have some cross members across here between these as well. We'll see how we get on and see how strong it all feels. There we go, that's 6 of them in. Unfortunately, the 2 leftover bits are too short. I really want one in the middle. I'm not too bothered about the sides because it's not a huge gap, but having a gap of that size, which is bigger than that, square in the middle of the bed, it's not ideal. Also, it's quite possible that this is going to be made out of several bits of plywood, so I'm going to need something to be able to connect in the middle. Luckily, if you remember me taking apart that old shed, that's one of the pieces of wood from the old shed. There's only one of them, but it's the same as this, so it means I can cut a middle one. It's heavier as well, so I'm presumably stronger. So I'm just going to cut and sand that, get that into position like the rest, and see what plywood I can hunt out. That's them all in now, and as you can see, this slides nicely back and forth. So what I need to do now is set this stopper rail on the underside, but of course I need to factor in the thickness of these. So basically what I'm going to have to do is between this piece of wood and each of the slats, I'm going to have a block, and the block is going to have to be bigger than the thickness of this. So there's the slats in their position, and this is that bit of wood that was the stopper that now has 10 blocks on it. It's not the prettiest looking thing I've ever made, but it's not really going to matter. So I've drilled holes in the ends of each of those. Now I've got to go underneath to do this, because I need to make sure that this is already in position like that, so that this is going to slide underneath. I'm going to put it all together, then it's just a matter of putting rails underneath, and that'll be done, and then can get the plywood on the top. Alright, here we go. So things changed a little bit. So initially this was going to be used, and I was going to put a rail that it would run along to make sure that the bed didn't just fall through, but as you can see it's lower than this, so I would have had to build down and out. So instead, which I don't know why I didn't think of this in the first place, the easiest option was just putting a ledge along the side. So I've done that on both sides, so now it slides along that. Right, that's the slats finished. There's 3 legs along the front there, and I actually had to router out bits that they fit into. They're not perfect, but along the front here I'm going to be using some more of this wood. There's going to have to be a little lip here to hold the mattress in. So now I'm just going to block this space in with that green stuff. You'll notice these seem on a wonk. That's because that's the middle of the van and that's the middle of the bed. These rails on the underside, that piece of wood right there, it's angled back slightly, which causes the slats to drop underneath more. When they get to here they're almost level, but when they're back here they're probably 3mm under, and that's important because when you put a piece of ply on top, this is the top of the bed, when you pull these slats you don't want a ton of friction between the plywood. So notice how the plywood didn't move. That's because there's no friction being created between the slats and the ply, which means this is really easy to pull out. So this little end piece is actually to sit there like that, and the same wood that's going to go across the front of this, will go across the front of that, box that off, and then that's ready to be plywooded over and have a little control panel put in, and then a little access point to get to the inside of that. Wow, it's bright. Hold on, give me a second. Gonna go in the woods a little bit. Just been to the local town and bought some more plywood, got a load more 9mm ply. So today is the day that I finished the bed. 100% finished. He'll still need his mattress, which I'll need to order online. But I don't want to order that too soon because it's still going to be a workshop for quite a while and I've got nowhere else to put the mattress apart from inside the van. It's definitely looking more like a camper van. I didn't film it because it's just cutting plywood. It's pretty simple, measuring it up, using the jigsaw, cutting it. It's not screwed down yet, all these panels are still free. But all this plywood is going to be attached down. This is where the control panel is going to go. That's going to give us access to lights and USBs and stuff like that. Then that's going to be a storage bin, and then the corner is going to be a camera and so on and so forth. But the important thing is that this slides out nicely from underneath the plywood. So that's 152 across, and that's like 196. I think a king size bed is actually 198, so it falls slightly short of a king size bed. So all that's left to do is to put wood on the front, going between the legs. It's going to help strengthen it up, and it's going to make it look better when it's sat in that position. So that's all the plywood completely screwed down, apart from these two bits here. Going to be building a storage space under that one, so I don't want to screw that in yet, and that one's going to hold the control panel. Then hopefully I'll have the time to put the front on that as well, and then that will be the bed finished. So there we go, like I said, two little compartments, and I've put in a little support there and a little support at the end, which will help me build the framework underneath that's going to create the box that's going to be the storage space. So using this bit here, I'll create a plywood partition so that it's like two boxes to separate off whatever gets stored in there. I've been cutting these little sections here. These are going to double up as the mattress holder, as in it'll stop the mattress from sliding over, and it's going to double up as a handle. So you'll just grab that and lift it to be able to get in there. So I've got this bit of ply, but it's worth noting where all this kind of structure is underneath, because the control panel and stuff's going to go here, but obviously the cables and stuff need to be able to drop down. I'm actually really lucky because the control panel fits absolutely fine. So obviously it'll be on the wood, the plywood, but all the cables and fuses and stuff behind it drop down absolutely fine. Then the next thing that I'll need is the button for the inverter, which fits absolutely perfectly there. Then it'd be handy to have some more USBs. These have lights on them, so I'm going to wire them into the switches so that these can be powered on and off, because otherwise it's just going to shine bright light up onto the ceiling, which isn't ideal when you try to sleep. These will actually sit raised above the plywood, which is fine, because so will all the buttons and everything else. I mean, obviously on the plywood I've got more room than this. They could go there if I wanted to, but it looks like they'll fit like that. So my control system is going to look like that, and it's going to have 6 USBs within one space, because this has got 2 USBs in it. I'm not connecting anything to it, I'm just letting the cables dangle underneath so that I can wire in to the battery system, which is just below. Basically I need to map out those devices on this piece of plywood, then cut the holes in the plywood and then fit it, and of course screw all the panels in. I think I might actually paint all of the wood along here. I paint it all black. It all works. The whole bed slides in and out. And it comes pretty much to the edge. It's pretty cool, and it's not as heavy as it looks actually. I haven't put any along the very bottom because the mattress is always going to sit here. And then when it's in bed mode, it comes out, so it doesn't really matter that there's a tiny little gap there when the foam's put up on this part of the bed. These weren't opening with this front facing wood, so I had to cut an edge off. But if you notice that the cupboard door was never sitting on this piece of wood, so it's done nothing to the strength because it still sits on the same pieces. And just opens just the same. And the same on the other side. So that's my bed built, and it folds away into a bench. All I have to do now is buy my mattress, but like I say, I'll be doing that at a later date. Thanks for watching, guys. If you tune in next time, I'll be wiring into my electronics and also getting a kitchen sink in.